to Eric Hates Games. This is a talk show about games, the people who make them, the people who play them, and everything in between. Each week we pick a topic and discuss. If you have any questions or you want to join the show, please email me. You can find my information on the web. I'm everywhere. And this week we're placing our workers, we're collecting our victory points, and we're building our decks. My name is Eric, and I love modern board games. So, before we get to talking about what makes a game modern, and of course there's many other genres we can place on this, like modern Euro, a lot of times these are called European games because of the designers who make them, but even before we get there, let's talk about what makes a game classic. Have you played any classic games, Andreas?
Oh yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I really enjoyed Candyland.
Candyland?
Yeah.
Why? What would make Candyland like a classic board game?
Well, one, because, it came out like a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Candyland, I think, came out in like the 80s or 90s or something, and, it's just, I think it's more of like nostalgia reasons and having it being like so classic because, as like if you're like a 5-6-year-old kid, you're playing Candyland, you're like, oh, I'm going through the gumdrop forest up Weenier and all these like different whimsical places, and you're like, oh my god, this is so cool.
Yeah, there's definitely the nostalgia and the family friendliness to it. Either of you guys play any classic games?
Not really. I mean, obviously Candyland and stuff. I grew up with Monopoly, stuff like that.
Yeah.
All the popular American stuff.
The
I'm
American
sure they're not
pop
American
board
names,
games?
but you know what I mean.
They are. Those are, which is funny. Yeah.
Connect 4 was one I played with my brother all the time, and it would get into fights and argue over it constantly.
Yeah. Did you know that Connect 4 is a solved game?
Recently, I remember you told me.
Okay.
That. Yeah.
Connect 4 is pretty great. So fun facts about these random classic American board games. One is Candyland was developed during the lupus epidemic?
Yes.
Or the polio epidemic.
I think, the lupus or polio epidemic.
Yeah.
They made it, I think, for the kids in the hospital.
Yeah, to give them something to do while they're all stuck in the hospital and wards in order to feel like they're running outside. But mechanically speaking, it's often a game that gets a lot of flack from like game purists and gamers and stuff like that because it's really just random chance.
Yeah.
Right? You shuffle the deck and whatever color comes up the most wins.
Yeah.
Basically. Very simple games, usually classic. Monopoly, people just keep buying Monopoly year after year because, like you said, that's what I grew up with.
Yeah.
So I grew up with Monopoly, so I'm going to buy it for my kids.
There's like 50 variations now of Monopoly.
Oh, yeah.
Of different stuff, of different like shows and movies and games and all that.
Including Fortnite Monopoly.
2 editions.
Fortnite Monopoly.
2 editions of Fortnite Monopoly?
When I saw it, it was 2 different colors.
Which ones?
2 different.
Season 2?
Probably.
So chapter 2, whatever.
Chapter 2.
Oh my god.
Minions Monopoly.
Bossonopoly. I mean, we could have a whole episode on different Monopolies that are all just Monopoly with different pieces, right? So anyways, let's switch gears and talk about the real meat and potatoes of the day, which is what's a modern game or a European board game? One is, like Charles alluded to, the fact that they're usually designed by European individuals. Okay, so Catan is, what's his name? Klaus Tuber. Klaus Tuber. Can't forget Klaus Tuber. Klaus Tuber designed Catan, but a lot of these modern games are way more strategic, less on the random side, more on the strategy and thinking and planning, and there's usually many mechanics, and this is a gamer word that every gamer knows, but if you don't know what mechanics are, can either of you, Charles, you want to give us like an example of a mechanic in a video game or a board game?
I feel like that sounds pretty self-explanatory. I mean, like in a game, the ability to jump, that's a mechanic. Anything can be a mechanic when you break it down.
Sure. Mechanics are generally verbs, the things you do.
Yeah.
Right? So like, The progression system in an RPG is not really a mechanic, but the ability to, like you said, jump is. What about a board game mechanic, Joe? You got any?
Backgammon, you roll the die.
Roll the dice.
Dice, not
rolling,
dice.
right? Rolling is a mechanic, and it's also a randomizer. But yeah, so these games have more mechanics. Like, for example, in Forbidden Island, you have many action points, and you can take 4 different actions in your turn. One action could be shoring up a tile. The other could be moving. The other could be collecting a treasure. The fourth can be trading. Already, this is a little bit more intense than Monopoly, which is roll. What did you land on? Do you want to buy it? Next.
Yeah, there's a lot of depth, a lot of stuff going on under the hood there.
Yeah. So these games are a lot more complex, and that leads to, I don't know, a more, I would say, mature audience who gets into them. So let's talk about Catan. Have either of you played Catan? Tell us a little bit about Catan in a non-pedantic, boring way. Like I've been doing, not you. I've been just droning. Go on.
So it's been a while since I played it. I played it back in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a hexagonal board, I guess, or
Hexagon.
it's hexagon board, and it's separated into cells of the same shape. And you play in between the cells, and they all have their own type of terrain. So like mountain or forest, or I think it was like desert was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you place houses in between those sections, and I believe every time your turn comes back around, you get the resources that you have. So there's like, I think this was like wheat field, or is this the other? I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's forests.
Great. Totally
And
fine.
then you get the resources, and that allows you to build more houses and roads to other areas of the map.
Mm-hmm.
And since they're set up like hexagons, the map won't always be the same based off of how you set it up.
There, you want to show this map here?
Yeah, so this is like how it would standardly be set up. It's I don't remember the rules specifically, but you would move in between the spaces.
on this one. Yeah.
Sorry. You'd move in between the hexagons, and then you'd build roads so you can move and gain more resources, and then eventually, I think the goal of the game was to make sure no one else could build or something.
It's to have the most points.
Most points, that's right.
Right? And
It's
so,
been a while.
Yeah. And what's funny about these like highly complex games is that oftentimes the objective is, at the end, have the most points. And the real questions are, when does it end? What are the conditions that make it end? And how do I get points? In Catan, you get points 4 or 5 different ways, right? Houses give you points. The bigger settlements give you points. If you have the longest road, you get points. If you have specific cards, you get points. The biggest army gets points. So, you're right. What's cool about Catan is that, as you were showing us, the board is hexagonal, and it's all these hexagonal pieces. But it's also what's known as modular, which means every single time you play Catan, the board is going to be different. Okay, so automatically it's called input randomness, where Monopoly, every single time you play Monopoly, Boardwalk is the last one, right? Boardwalk's the last property, is that correct?
I'm not 100, but it's the same location.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
It's
Yeah.
the sweet blue ones?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's one way that a lot of these games are different, is this random element before the game starts. It's called input randomness. But there are a bunch of mechanics like rolling dice, placing units, placing houses, placing resources, right? You're playing resources from your hand, like wheat, sheep, which I think is wool.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Lumber, and dirt, I don't know.
I think it was brick.
Brick, sure, yeah. And there's also trading. You can trade with other players, which is one of the reasons why I don't love Catan, but it says a game of discovery, settlement, and trade. Won the Spiel des Jahres in 1995, which is a big deal.
That's that big German award.
Yeah, that's the big German award. It's like the German Academy Awards for board games every year. And Settlers of Catan won in 95, and we're going to talk about Dominion a little later, that won in 2009. And basically, if you're looking for something new, just look up Spiel des Jahres, Spiel, whatever. It's German. You'll find it.
You can look it up.
Yeah. So let's talk about Kickstarter for a minute. Andreas, you ever kickstart anything?
Have I ever Kickstarted anything? No. But no, I've always wanted to, but I don't really like using online like money for things.
Sure.
So but it still just amazes me, all the stuff that does get kickstarted, and all these things getting like millions of dollars by people, and it's like, wow, it's like all this stuff I never heard of before. I'm like, oh, that looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Hope it becomes like an actual thing. But no, myself personally, I've never kickstarted anything.
Okay.
I'm maybe someday in the future.
Yeah. Either of you guys?
No, back when Kickstarter first became popular, I was 11, so I didn't have
there was
many
also
sources
that.
of income.
Yeah, sure.
We were like, what, 11, 12?
Yeah.
In terms of video games, I've come close to supporting stuff. Though.
Close. You're the closest one. You almost kickstarted Wonderful 101.
I almost did.
Oh man.
What about,
Even lately, too.
what about Monster Prom?
Monster
Monster
Prom?
Prom.
Yeah,
That was a
Monster
big
Prom.
one.
That was a
That's
huge
I
one.
don't know
Yeah.
what that
That's
is.
Kickstarter.
It's a dating sim
It's
video
Monster
game.
Dating Sim.
Makes
Very
sense.
successful. Look it up.
Yeah, it's gender fluid dating
Yeah.
sim, right?
It's
Yeah.
multiplayer too.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of stuff going on in this Monster Prom
Yeah.
Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, Kickstarter started around 2011. It is a website and a service where consumers pay money for a product that is to be made in the near future. So the way they're usually set up is you have tiers, donating tiers, and if you donate $1, you get nothing, or you get your name in the credits. You donate $10, you get a copy of the game. You donate, and your name in the credits. You donate $20, you get a wooden copy of the game, and your name. And so there's different tiers, and if they meet their funding goal, they make the game, and everyone who contributed gets a copy of it.
Pay $30,000 and they fly you out to have dinner with the developers or something.
Yes, sometimes they have absurd pledge
Yes.
levels,
Yeah.
and they also have stretch goals. So some big ones that came out were Kingdom Death Monster raised $1.5 million. Cards Against Humanity only raised $15,000, but it went on to sell millions and millions. Everyone, it's a household name, Cards Against Humanity. And Exploding Kittens grossed over $8.7 million on Kickstarter. So it's a place that allowed board games to be revitalized in the last decade.
It was it was a great platform to bring more of these board games into light, because as board games went down in popularity, and no one really publishes board games anymore in the traditional sense, because it's too risky of a venture or whatever. It was great that they have a Kickstarter, a crowdsourcing. It's hey, you like this board game concept, it's so cool, what about all of you come together and just raise money so we can make this thing come to life? And all the stuff that came out of it, Cards Against Humanity, Exploding Kittens, all these different concepts of board games that you wouldn't really see on a shelf in Toys R Us or something. It's really cool.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for our first segment. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some gateway games that you can pick up at home to get into board gaming in a modern way.
Yeah.
Welcome back. And we're still here talking about modern/European style board games,
And you're still here, which is good, I hope.
which is wonderful. We love to have you every single episode. So here are some gateway games that you can try, or maybe you've heard of, but haven't actually sat down at a board game shop. And first of all, I want to say, in my opinion or my experience, one, board game people are way nicer than video game people, both makers and players. And two, there are a lot of places to play board games in 2020. Okay, there are meetups for board game players. There are board game shops, card and game shops. There's one in Randolph. There's one in Boonton. There's one in Dover, I'm sure.
I think so, yeah, there's one in Dover.
And so oftentimes, if you really want to venture out and try something new, you can go to what are called open board game nights. And usually these shops have hundreds of board games on shelves around their entire place. Carcassonne has a good one too.
Yeah, Carcassonne.
And if you look up their hours and find open board game nights, just go there. And if you don't know anything about games, ask the owner or whoever's working the cash register. They'll be like, oh, you know what? You should try Machi Koro. And you're like, Machi what?
Like, what is that?
Yeah, and they're like, how about Sushi Go? And you're like, wait, what? I like sushi. And you'll have a wonderful time. Quirkle, great. Anyways, gateway games. 1, Catan.
Yes.
Play Settlers of Catan. It is by far not my favorite game. My friends and I have talked about this at length. If given the option between Catan and like a dozen other Euro games, I would choose all of them over Catan. But you should play it, especially if you're just getting into board games.
Don't take our word for it. Take the Green Bay Packers' word for it. The Green Bay Packers, I remember reading about they would go in the locker rooms between practices and play Settlers of Catan. I don't know if they still do it now, but they used to do it like a few years back.
Yeah, and they won the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. They won the Super Bowl on the back of Settlers of Catan. That gave them the energy to win the Super Bowl.
That was it. Yeah.
Gave them the strategic edge.
The
they
strategic
needed to win the
edge,
Super
yep.
Bowl.
Brett Favre came back this year for the longest road, the longest pass. Anyways, yeah. So a lot of people do play Catan. It's probably on Big Bang Theory. I don't know. I haven't watched that show.
I bet it is.
Yeah, and they make fun of it in The Office. The Cones of
Yeah.
Dunshire.
I didn't really
No,
watch that.
Parks and Rec. Sorry,
Parks
I
and Rec,
get
yeah.
those mixed up.
They're the same thing.
Yeah. So another one that's a great opener is called Carcassonne. Not just the city in France. And Carcassonne is what's known as a tile placement game. Did either of you guys play Carcassonne?
I play Carcassonne. Carcassonne is actually my personal favorite that I would heartily recommend.
Okay, tell us how to play it.
So the basic gist of Carcassonne is that you're building roads and you're building like old towns and cities. You're using workers, you place them on the tile, and you build like roads for yourself, and you can like claim the roads over the town and cities. And you get points based on like how long your road is or how big the cities and town that you build is.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal is to build like have the most points at the end by having the building the biggest cities and having like and claiming the longest roads.
Yeah. Yeah, and the very basic thing, you can play with up to 5 people, or I think it's 8 players.
Yep, up to 8 people can do it.
So you can play 2 to 8 people, and on my turn, I'm picking up a tile. It's a nice square cardboard tile, and I'm putting it down anywhere on the map, so to speak. Just so you think of like a vertical bird's eye view of a city. And it's easy enough that like I've played it with my 2-year-old niece.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, does this road match this road? Yes, then it's a legal
Yep.
move. If not, it's not legal.
Mm-hmm.
And what's neat is you're all building this gigantic city together
Mm-hmm.
that is going to look different every time you play, but you're competing against one another.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like I'll build a city here instead of completing your city, and you're like, no, I needed that piece. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Is it like a sort of competitive Sprawlopolis sort of game, or is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, just like Sprawlopolis. Yeah, it's competitive. You're building onto tiles. It's called a tile placement
Yeah.
game.
If you wanted to wonder what it was like to own 5 roads in like 3 cities, then play Carcassonne and make your wildest dreams come true.
Yeah, the extra game is you get to name the roads.
Yeah, and you get to name the roads too, if you're brave and imaginative enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect. 7 Wonders. Anyone play 7 Wonders? No?
I've heard of it, but I've never played it before.
Okay, 7 Wonders is a game that up to 7 people can play, which is another great game for big groups. And 7 Wonders is great because it plays the same amount of time, around 30 minutes to 45 minutes, whether there's 3 players or 7. And that's because everyone plays at the same time. And it takes what's called a drafting system. Does anyone play Magic the Gathering? So if you've played Magic the Gathering, have you done a booster draft before?
Yeah.
Can you explain a booster draft just so we can get you on the camera some more?
Yeah. Oh, please. A booster draft is basically where you essentially buy like 20 booster packs, and then you use the cards you get from that pack to build a deck.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows, and then you verse other people who are doing the exact same thing. So you don't know what you're going to get. Generally, it'll be like a new release is what they'll try and do, so you can see all the new cards and try and like quickly make a deck with whatever like cards you haven't seen before.
Right.
So it's sort of like puts everyone on the same playing field of like you got to know like what effects, regardless of what the card does or what fraction it's from.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's really. It was one of the first. Like that's how I got into Magic. I think I went to Newtown Manga, or was it Newtown? It was a manga. It was like a card game store, and
Okay.
they did like a booster thing like that.
Yeah, this is what I like about video game or game people, is that they discuss things in a more advanced way without ever knowing it. So can you just tell us, and I appreciate that you're telling us what the point is of the draft and everything. Can you tell us the nitty-gritty, boring part of what is drafting? So step one, I'll give you an example. Step one is opening the pack. You look at all the cards. Then what?
You smell the cards and get that new card smell in your nose.
So you open up the pack and then you look through the cards, and
Everyone at the same time.
Everyone at the same time. Everyone's looking at their cards at the exact same time. So everyone's figuring out what they got at the exact same time. And, you know, going from pack to pack, it's really just a matter of, oh my God, that's an amazing effect. Or I wonder how I could use this in a specific way. Or, you know, a card could be like +5 mana if you tap this creature, but he has like 1 health. So you're like, maybe I could use this if I have more, if I get lucky and have cards that protect other cards. So you're really like,
Too strategic.
Sorry.
You're looking at all your cards, and what do? What's the verb? You take one.
You take one. Oh, that's right.
And then you pass the rest of the cards to your left.
Sorry, I forgot about that part.
Right? And everyone does that. So you take a card, you pass the rest to your left. You take a card, you pass the rest until you have no cards in hand. And now everyone, that's what's known as a draft. Thank you. So,
Sorry.
it's totally fine. It's just like, it's awesome how quickly we like go into our gamer talks and like how much mana something costs, and people are like, what's a mana? What are you talking about?
That's right.
So if you were playing like with the deck of cards, you take one, you pass them, you take one, you pass them. And Seven Wonders is like that, but instead of creatures and monsters and stuff, you're just getting buildings. You're building a city, and each one of your buildings produces different wares, and your wares are your costs for other buildings and stuff like that. So it's kind of amazing. And then Dominion here's what the Dominion looks like, the thing looks like. It's
such a weird thing to show.
Yeah, I cut out the cardboard because I have a custom box that I put all of my Dominion sets into. So this box that's propping up this other box has like 4 Dominion sets in it. And that's another common thing about Euro style games, is that they have the base game and then there are expansion packs, and those expansions usually elongate the game. Dominion came out in 2009, won the Spiel des Jahres, and created a new genre of game, and that's the deck building genre. Did you play any deck builders or no?
Not really.
No?
The closest does Triple Triad from Final Fantasy VIII count?
I don't think so. I think that's more card collecting, right?
Okay.
That's like a collectible card game. Andreas, you play a deck builder?
I mean, I guess if you count Yu-Gi-Oh as a deck builder.
No,
it's
I don't.
probably not a deck builder then. I'm not put a deck builder.
Okay, so what's interesting is that most people think of card games and they think of Pokemon, maybe they think of Magic the Gathering, maybe they think of Yu-Gi-Oh! And those are all collectible card games, meaning you buy a bunch of cards and you collect them. And then with those cards that you have, you create a pre-constructed deck and you come to the table with that deck. And your opponent has done the exact same thing. It's not quite pay to win. It's definitely pay to play. And the more you pay, the better your chances are because you have more cards. In a deck builder, everyone starts with the same resources and the same opportunities. So in Dominion, everyone starts with seven I don't remember what they're called, peons or something. and no, 7 copper and 3 estates. Okay, so everyone's deck is 10 cards. It's 7 coppers, 3 estates. You all shuffle and you draw your hand. Now you look at what's available to you, and you buy cards from the middle, and they go into your deck. And eventually you draw them, and you keep buying from the middle, and your deck it starts like this, and it gets bigger, and it's bigger, and it's bigger, and you're building a deck. And at the end of the game, you literally look through all of your cards and see who has the most green cards. And the person with the most victory points wins. So, really interesting genre. It's gone on to influence not just board games. There are a host of deck building board games, Ascension, Star Realms. There are more, but I can't think of them. The Street Fighter card game. I think there's a Lord of the Rings deck builder, Game of Thrones deck. There's so many deck building games now, and it also has influenced video games like Slay the Spire is a deck building game. But anyways, Forbidden Island is a great cooperative game.
Fully cooperative.
I might recommend it more than Pandemic because it's easier to get to the table, but Pandemic and Forbidden Island are the same designer, same people. But you want to talk us a little bit through Forbidden Island?
So Forbidden Island. So imagine you're Indiana Jones, and there's 4 other people that are also Indiana Jones, but they do different things. That's Forbidden Island. So your goal is there's artifacts on like the playing field, the board, which is made together by a bunch of cards, and your goal is to.
I just want to show the back.
Yeah,
it shows
there's
what
the
it
back.
looks like.
So your goal here is to gather all the artifacts and go to the exit point and get out all together, and that's how you win. But the area that you are traversing through is constantly under being threat of going underwater. So as you're moving across the map, some cards will flip over and be like, okay, this area that you went to previously is now underwater. And every time you have a set of turns that you can do, and one of your turns you either move, you can not make one of the cards that is underwater, you can make it no longer underwater.
Shore it up, yeah.
Yeah, shore it up. And you can also, you have the different characters, you have different like jobs. There's like the pilot, there's some other stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter, but they do like different things. So like a pilot, for example, in the board game itself, you would move like once, side to side or up and down. If you're a pilot, you can essentially move anywhere in the map without having to go one at a time. And there's like 3 other like jobs that they work. How the cooperative works is you can like work together with your stuff that you have to get all of the artifacts and get out. It's a very wonderful, like fully cooperative board game.
Yeah.
I would wholeheartedly recommend this to a lot of people if they want something that they can all play together.
Yeah, it's nice when you don't have to be competitive, and it's also, so cooperative, just to be super blatant, means people against the game.
Yeah.
You're all working together.
Players versus environment.
Yeah, PvE. And so it's nice to get people around. Like Forbidden Island are games that I'll play with my in-laws because they're not big. I don't want to compete against my father-in-law.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes maybe, but like, it's less hostile to be like, let's all play together.
Yeah.
So, anyways, thank you for joining us on this journey into really just the beginning, just the tip of the iceberg of modern Euro board games. And
There's
if you're
a whole
interested,
treasure trove of them.
there's a Forbidden Island with treasure troves in it, and please play more games.
There's trees.
This week's life advice is
Sign up for Eric Guadara's game design concepts class. You make board games.
this week's real life advice is
Plug
sign
it
up
in
for
the
my
class.
classes.